You are listening to your new Puppies podcast, starting you and your dog off on the right paw. Here's your host, Debbie Salento.
Hello and welcome to episode 98 of your new Puppies podcast. I'm Debbie, and today I'm going to help you troubleshoot why your dog isn't listening. Now, this is an extremely common question I get, especially once my clients' puppies get into adolescence. And here's the thing is that there's no one answer, because why your dog isn't listening depends on a multitude of factors. So it's definitely one of those questions that I get that I'm like, all right, I got 50 questions back for you to try to figure this out, because it's going to depend on what's happening, what you're asking your dog to do, what is the environment like, what have you taught them previously, and even more. So what I'm going to talk about here is reasons why it might be happening, because if we figure that out, then the next steps can become more clear. Not always, but it is going to be much easier to figure out what we need to do next. And I find that this boils down to one of 5 reasons. Actually, I'm going to take that back. It boils down to 5 different reasons that aren't mutually exclusive. A lot of times it's a combination of them. One might stand out more than the other, but these all kind of relate to each other. But it's still going to help you to understand why it's happening. So before we dive in, I also want to make sure that our expectations are in the right place. Because if you have a puppy that isn't listening to you, that's probably normal. I'm not saying it's fine, it's okay if your puppy doesn't listen to you, but it's probably going to be all of these reasons, to be honest. And you're going to see as we go through them, they all still apply, but our puppies are learning everything right now. And they are little aliens that have been dropped into our households. I mean, all dogs are, really, not just puppies. And they're only going to learn what we teach them. And we're still teaching them everything. So a lot of times when we understand that, we can bring the frustration level down, which I love to do for you because it can be very overwhelming. As I said, these reasons will still apply, but I just wanted to mention that because we always need patience with our dogs, and we need even more patience with our puppies. So let's dive into reason number 1. It's possible we are asking our dog to do something we haven't even taught them yet. When we call our dog and we expect them to come when called, that is nowhere in a dog's nature. But as a dog owner, maybe when you got the dog, you're like, well, that a dog should come when they're called. Yes, but we have to teach it to them. We have to work with them first. This also happens a lot with the command off, where as soon as our dog starts jumping, we start saying off, 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 off. But we have not taught them what that word means. So this one is really hard because we kind of have to dismantle our own expectations of our dog, remembering that they are little aliens that have been dropped into our lives and they only know what we have taught them. So we really have to remove ourselves from what we know what we want and ask, does the dog? Have I taught them what I want in this moment? Do they understand what this word means? Did I teach them that? Because if you didn't, then they do not know. So your next step is to create a little bit of a controlled environment, do some formal training where you teach the dog what you want from them in that moment. Okay? Number 2, we went too fast. We skipped those easy steps, which are actually how we create the foundation. Now, this is really easy for us to do as humans because usually the first few steps are incredibly easy, mundane, and boring. So if you have a cue or a behavior that's a little shaky, sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, this is probably what happened. So when I work with families, I always use this video game example where, whenever you start a new game, whether it's an app on your phone or, a complicated game on Xbox. The first few levels are always incredibly easy, okay? And when you're first starting the game, you might not even notice it because you're learning the game. It's teaching you the strategies. It's teaching you how the controls work, how the rules work, how the characters work, right? That's the function of making it incredibly easy at first so you can learn these things. And then once you learn them, then the video game starts throwing the more challenging things on you. It also serves as a way to get you addicted. Because if it gives you these really super quick wins at first, you want to keep playing. You think this game is super fun because you've gotten these quick wins. And that's exactly what we want for our dog. One, we want to teach them the super, super basics. And two, we want to give them a whole bunch of quick wins to keep and maintain the fact that training and learning from your human is super fun. Now, once you do get far into the game, say you learn to like level 20, if for some reason, say the game got erased or you had to start over for some reason and like the first couple levels, they're going to be like mind-numbingly boring to you. And that's what's happening to you with training your dog because these first steps are just so incredibly obvious and they're boring. And so we just want to keep going. But our dog is playing this game for the first time. So we have to make sure that we are there to teach them those first steps. Just today, I got a text from a client who I saw yesterday, and she's like, oh, doing really well with the skills we taught. What's next? And I was like, no. It's been a day. It's been a day. I understand you want to keep going, but your dog, I know, is not ready for it yet. Keep going, keep reinforcing it, keep teaching it. Number 3, we haven't practiced in this environment. Okay, when we teach our dogs, so this has a lot to do with distractions. And I have a whole episode about this, episode 57. This is a big one. This is a really common one. So that's probably going to be an excellent episode for you to go to next after listening to this one. As always, I link to it in the show notes, or you can go and scroll and look for episode 57, how to get your dog to listen with distractions. So this one, when I say we didn't practice in this environment, it's because we teach our dogs to sit in our living room, or we teach them to walk, loose leash walking right outside our home. And then we go to the park and they're not listening. Okay, because it's not just about teaching our dogs their skills and behaviors. It's also about the environments. It does not translate. So in episode 57, I go into a lot of detail, but in general, we have to think of environments from 0 to 10, the different levels. Okay, so I'm back to levels. It's kind of like a video game, but it works. We can't go from 0 to 10. We have to work our dogs up. If we teach them to sit in our living room, then we have to teach them to sit outside. Then we have to teach them to, sit on their normal walk. Before they're going to sit in a park with kids running around, a soccer game going on, squirrels in the trees, and cars going by. So to have them listen to you in a certain environment, we have to practice in that environment. Okay, so if this is something your dog normally listens to, but right now they're not, and this is a new environment for them, or there's a lot of things going on that normally aren't, this is probably the reason. And if you want your dog to listen to you in any environment, go listen to episode 57. I talk about how to do that there. Number 4, probably the least favorite of them all. It's probably the hardest one to fix because it has to do with our habits and our dogs. So number 4 is they've already learned they don't have to listen. I have a whole episode about the downside of a backyard, and I talk about this a lot with recall. In that episode, it's episode 53. So essentially, it follows the same reason why trainers are like, say the word once. Do not repeat yourself. Because a lot of times, we tell them to come to us, and they don't. They ignore us. They're not on a leash. There's nothing we can do about it, so we continue to call them because we think, well, we've already called them. Now they have to listen to us. Like, we have to make sure that they listen. We can't, quote unquote, give up. So we continue to call them. And we probably get more and more firm about it. It's probably like, Mariah, come. Mariah, come. Mariah, get over here. It escalates. When all we're doing in that moment is teaching them they don't have to listen because there's nothing we can do about it. because they're not on a leash. It's not a controlled environment. This happens with Leave It a lot too, where our dog's eating the mulch and we're yelling, leave it, as we go running over to them, but they're trying to eat as much as possible before we get there because they've already learned that that's what they can do and they get away with it because there's nothing we can do about it once it's in their belly. So this is probably the reason if it's always a similar situation that it's happening in. If you're like, my dog doesn't listen to me when I tell them to come inside from the backyard. My dog doesn't listen to me when I take them on this off-leash hike. My dog will eat things on a walk when they're out on the end of the leash. If it's a similar common place that it's happening consistently, this is probably the reason, especially if they used to listen. So what I always say is if you find yourself in this situation and you ask your dog to do something more than once, stop. Change strategies. That might mean going to them. That might mean getting out your leash. That might mean getting out a high-value treat because I'd rather you bribe them in that moment than teach them they don't have to listen. And then you take stock of the environment. You take stock of why is this happening? Is it happening here all the time? What do I need to do to change that? And it's probably create a more controlled environment. Put them on a leash. Get some high-value treats out and work in this specific area before you then give them more freedom again. And number 5, sometimes it's just not today. Just like us, our dogs have good days and they have bad days. This is especially important for a puppy who is overexcited, overtired, overstimulated, that it's not a teachable moment. And if we get frustrated because they're not listening, they're going to get frustrated because they're reading that energy, and it's going to be this feedback loop. And it's just time to manage the situation, get them out of there, and try again tomorrow. This is especially important if it's the first time really it's happened, if it's at the end of the day and you know your dog is overtired, if you know that you haven't taken them for a walk in 2 days because it's been raining out, so they have too much energy. It just may not be a teachable moment. We still take stock of the environment, take stock of what's happening, so maybe we can prevent it next time. If it's happening on a regular basis, it's probably one of the other reasons. But if it's a one-time thing, especially in a new environment, especially if you can pinpoint the reason, it's okay to just be like, nope, we're gonna do this again tomorrow. We're done for today. Completely okay. Okay, so let's just quickly review these 5 reasons, and I will let you go on your way, and maybe you want to check out one of the episodes that I've mentioned if you want more information. Okay, so number 1 is that we're asking our dogs to do something that we haven't even taught them yet. This is a hard one because we have to dismantle our own expectations and really ask ourselves, have I taught my dog what I want here? Have I taught them this word? Have I taught them this behavior or the behavior that I want? Number 2, we went too fast. We skipped those easy steps. So if it's a shaky, say, recall or anything like that, where sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, this is probably the reason. And now you just have to go back to the beginning and make sure that we firm up that foundation with the super easy steps that we find boring, but is important for our dog to go through. Number 3, we didn't practice in this environment. This has everything to do with distractions. If you haven't practiced in a high distraction environment, then they're not going to listen in a high distraction environment. Okay, we have to build them up to it and then practice there. Number 4, they've already learned they don't have to listen. So if this is happening in a similar situation, in a similar place, on a regular basis, this is probably it. And number 5, and sometimes it's just not today. We're having a bad day, they're having a bad day. It's not a teachable moment. Let's just accept that and move on and try again later. And that is all I have for you today. If you were enjoying this podcast, you can rate it and review it wherever you listen. That helps other puppy owners find the podcast. If you would like to continue working with me, for example, your dog's not listening and you want a little bit more guidance, I do have in-person and virtual private sessions, or you can join my signature program, Your Perfect Puppy, which includes 6 months in Playtime Paws Academy, where you get direct access to me to answer your training questions. You can find all of that information at playtimepause.com. Otherwise, I thank you so much for listening. I'll see you back here next time. Bye for now.